This story was shared on our /scary stories, posted by Reddit user SadTiger4457. The title is, "My friend told me this story as a joke. I really hope he invented it." A few days ago, my friend Marcus and I were having a beer at his place. Out of nowhere, he asked me a weird question. "Do you ever feel like your apartment layout doesn't make sense?" I laughed and asked him what he meant. Marcus had just moved into a cheap, older studio apartment in the city center. He looked completely serious, his face pale. He told me that over the weekend, he decided to measure his walls because he wanted to buy a new wardrobe. He measured the inside length of his hallway, exactly 15 feet. Then, he went outside into the public building corridor and measured the exterior wall of his apartment, from his front door to the corner of the building. It was 19 feet. There was a 4-foot gap of completely unaccounted for space between his hallway wall and the building's outer structure. No windows, no doors, no ventilation shafts. Just a dead, hidden void running the entire length of his apartment. Marcus assumed it was just a terrible architectural design from the 1970s. He knocked on the hallway wall. It sounded hollow, but as he turned to walk away, he heard a sound from inside the wall. Thump. A single, heavy, deliberate knock. Right back at him. Marcus froze. He thought it might be rats, so he knocked again. From inside the wall, the reply came instantly. He didn't sleep that night. The next day, Marcus got obsessed. He took a flashlight, a hammer, and carefully broke a small, coin-sized hole through the drywall in the back of his bedroom closet, which shared a border with that hidden space. He pressed his eye against the hole and shone the flashlight inside. He expected to see pipes, dust, or wires. Instead, the beam of light cut through a long, narrow, pitch-black corridor. The floor of that hidden space was covered in hundreds of old, yellowed Polaroid photos. He couldn't see what was on them, but they were scattered everywhere. And then, Marcus noticed something else. A few feet away from his hole, sleeping bags were laid out on the floor. Trash, empty food cans, and clothes. Someone had been living inside the walls of his apartment building for a long time. Marcus was about to pull his face away to call the police when he heard a faint rustling sound from the far end of the dark void. Something was crawling toward his peephole. Fast. He didn't see a face. All he saw through the tiny hole was a single, bloodshot human eye suddenly appearing on the other side, staring right back into his closet. And then a raspy, dry voice whispered through the drywall, just inches from his ear. "Thank you for the light, neighbor. It gets so dark in here." Marcus screamed, pushed his heavy dresser in front of the closet, packed a bag, and ran out. He told me this entire story laughing nervously, saying it was just a creepy prank he was playing on me, and that he actually just had a bad dream. But yesterday, I tried calling him. His phone is disconnected. I drove by his building today, and his apartment windows are completely dark. I really want to believe Marcus just invented that story to scare me, but I can't stop looking at the walls in my own bedroom tonight. I hope you enjoyed that last story. Now let's move on to another chilling encounter. This story was shared on our /ghost stories, posted by Reddit user Stunning, Ep2722. The title is, "Ghost I Experienced While Dog Sitting for My Neighbor." I was half asleep on a stranger's couch at 3 in the morning when a dead man's intercom started ringing, and the dog was staring straight at the ceiling above me. So for context, my neighbor is a middle-aged lady who has lived in the house ever since she started taking care of her father. He died in a hospital and not in the home. Okay, So I come back from doing a photo shoot with my friend at a cemetery and head to my neighbor's to start watching her dog, Allie. I have dinner and then decide I need to sleep. I always have such a hard time falling asleep in someone else's home, and this time was no different. I was on the couch at midnight and decided to try and force myself to sleep. So I tucked myself into the couch with my back facing the room. I put some vibrational music on to try and help me drift off, and it kind of worked. When I put that on, it was 3 a.m. So I was like half asleep, half not, if that makes sense. I started to have what I now realize was a dream, which I usually do not typically have because I'm an excessive weed smoker. The dream goes like this. My neighbor walking in from the door and sitting down at the table that was right next to the couch I was asleep on. She says, "I forgot to mention some things about the house. There's this intercom that my dad used to call me when he needed help getting out of bed or going to the bathroom. I took the batteries out years ago, but sometimes it still rings. Immediately I'm woken up by a blaring alarm. It's ringing and ringing, and I open my eyes to see the dog staring at the ceiling right above where I was sleeping. I hear a loud thud and literally just grabbed my backpack and ran the fuck out of the door. I haven't felt anything like that before. It felt like I was 6 again and convinced a ghost was waiting for me in the dark. Anyway, I ran home and checked the clock. It was only 3:30, so that whole experience happened in around a 30-minute span. The next day I told my neighbor and she said, "Oh yeah, did I ever tell you about the call button? We do have one, and that was probably my dad saying hi. I'm sure he loved you. Also talked to my mom about this. She absolutely despises anything horror, it freaks her out too much. She said one day she was in the living room, same spot where I was, and she saw what she described as if someone took a stick of incense and spun it around in a quick spiral. She thinks she saw some sort of apparition, and I'm sure she did. Cool stuff. I like to imagine he's still watching over his house, especially because his daughter lives there. So beautiful to think about." Now let's move on to another chilling account. This story was shared on our /paranormal encounters, posted by Reddit user Captinker America. The title is, "Death Visited Our Oncology Unit Last Night. I work night shift bedside in a mixed acuity inpatient oncology ward as a CNA. Because of the nature of our unit, we have a lot of comfort care patients, people nearing their natural ends, so we don't do anything but provide them comfort in their last days. We see a lot of death on our floor and a lot of your basic hospital phenomena, our names being called when no one is around us, feelings of not being alone, call bells going off in empty rooms, etc. But I can't explain what a patient relayed what she experienced to us right after 3 out of 5 of our comfort care patients passed away in one night. Being a mixed acuity ward, we have patients who are independent and patients who are on bed rest and everything in between. The previous 19-07 shift that I worked, we had 3 different patients pass away at 9 p.m., 11 p.m., and 3:30 a.m. On the opposite side of the unit from the patient that had passed away at 3:30 a.m. was an independent patient whose spouse was staying overnight with her. The only thing I can say that was of note about her was the fact she had Q4 every 4 hours, neurochecks as she was admitted for CRS icons, a chemotherapy complication that frequently causes neurological symptoms, in particular the icons aspect. Otherwise, she was a completely ordinary patient and one of the healthiest on our floor, relatively speaking. This patient's spouse called us around 4 a.m. to say that his wife was behaving strangely, and so I, and my orientee, went to go check on her and alert the primary RN to her new symptoms. When we entered the room, the patient was sitting on the side of the bed arguing with her husband about how she's not crazy, She's absolutely certain that they were walking around in the hallway, etc. My orientee asked what exactly happened / what's going on. The patient proceeds to tell us, in great detail, about how she and her husband decided to go for a late-night walk on the unit as it was particularly quiet. My orientee and I both looked at each other as soon as she said the Q word. As any person that works in a hospital knows that shit is about to hit the fan if you mention things are quiet or slow. They walked around the unit. The unit is shaped like a big loop, and met a beautiful African-American woman with long black hair on the opposite side. They struck up a short conversation and made small talk until the other woman, who the patient assumed to be either a member of the nursing staff or another patient, asked if she had a key on her. Obviously, the patient said that she didn't need her keys on her. "I can't open the door if you don't have a key. You need your key." The patient insisted that the woman said this verbatim, kept asking if she had a key, and then said the woman looked at her and walked away from her. But she didn't feel any sort of disdain coming from the woman. She just seemed like she had somewhere she needed to be, and again the patient assumed she was part of the nursing staff and kept walking in the opposite direction. She also mentioned, over and over, that the woman had a very strong perfume, and that her husband was commenting on it as well, saying that it smelled very strongly of orchids. As she's describing this, the husband is insisting that none of this happened, that the patient was sleeping, and that he only woke up because the patient turned the lights on in the room. The patient is getting very frustrated at this point, and so my orientee and I go to get the nurse, so she can do a neuro check on her to make sure she's not having worsening neurological symptoms. It gave us both a serious case of goosebumps, and we can't really explain what kind of motivation this patient would have had to lie about experiencing this. Nurses and nursing staff are incredibly superstitious, and we often repeat on our floor that death comes in threes. 3 people passed away this previous shift. Everyone on our floor firmly believes that this patient spoke to death in the form of a beautiful, calm, and purposeful woman, leaving our floor after finishing her duty and moving on to find the next person who had their key to the door. I hope you enjoyed that last story. Now let's move on to another unsettling account. This story was shared on our /ghost stories, posted by Reddit user Marushii. The title is, "I've never believed in paranormal stuff until living in my current home, and I need help. I used to sleep soundly in my own bedroom. Now I can't even walk up the stairs without wondering what's waiting for me in the dark. This originally started one night a few years ago when I was lying down for bed. My dog, who has since passed away, started growling at the door, and he never growled. Then he jumped off the bed and walked toward the door, continuing to growl. I immediately get up, turn the light on, and look around. Nothing. I walk around the house, go downstairs, and still nothing. I ask my wife if she heard anything, but she didn't. I come back up, and the light is off, like the light switch is flipped, completely dark upstairs. I'm super freaked out, because at this point, I'm thinking someone is in my house. I go through every room, every closet, ready to punch someone. I don't find anything, and I'm so freaked out I sleep downstairs on the couch. I started thinking my wife is messing with me, and let it go. The next few days, my dog is growling again, but this time in the living room upstairs. There's nothing there, but he's acting like there is. At this point, I'm telling my wife this stuff, and we're like joking there's a ghost or something, and I'm still thinking maybe she's just been messing with me. The next weird thing happens when my wife is coming up the stairs, while I'm on my computer facing away from her. I have a little desk lamp, and the moment she reached the top of the stairs, the light turned off on its own, making my room dark. I freak out and turn it back on. At this point, I know she's not messing with me, and she's realizing something weird is going on. The longer these weird things go on, I just get this feeling that something is there. Sometimes I see movement out of the corner of my eye and just get chills, and it just feels like someone else is there. 2 weeks ago, before my dog passed away, I was woken up by what I thought was my wife calling my dog, as he jumped off the bed and ran towards her. I get out of bed, then see my dog come back into my room and follow me as I leave the room. I don't see my wife. If she comes upstairs, she always says hi to me. I go downstairs and my wife is in bed. We have separate rooms. The most recent thing to happen was tonight. I got this sudden feeling like someone was walking into my room on my right side, and I look over and see nothing. I say out loud, "If someone is there, turn the lights off." Nothing happens. It's probably in my head, I'm thinking. I get up to stretch and run downstairs, and I go to turn the stair light on. It doesn't turn on. At this point, I'm freaked out. I head downstairs to tell my wife, and she's also freaked out. She comes back up to check the light. It doesn't turn on. She walks up halfway and checks the bulb. It was unscrewed. I don't know what to do, but I feel like I can't sleep upstairs anymore. The places we once called home leave behind memories we'd rather forget. This story comes from our /scary stories, posted by Reddit user DesignerBus8593. The title is, "The Old Trailer I Used to Live In, True Story." When I was 8 years old, I slept in a bedroom that once belonged to a man who killed himself right outside the front door. And something in that trailer never let me forget it. So when I was around 8 years old, my parents were looking for a place to live close to my grandparents. This was when both of my parents were still together and we were trying to find something affordable. Then my dad met this person that offered to rent us this trailer. When we went to see it, it was clear that the previous owners were a wreck. There was a mother dog with puppies and it was trashed. When we went inside, we went to one of the rooms and it was really messy. But when we opened up the closet door, it was something out of a nightmare. There was a huge pile of flying cockroaches that were covering the whole floor. My mom has a big fear of roaches, so when she saw them, she immediately went outside. It was clear that this trailer needed to be repaired. The owner said that he would get it fixed himself. When we finally moved in, it was completely different in a good way. Everything was clean as if no one had lived there. When my mom unchained the dog, it mysteriously just left and we never saw it again. Our first few months of living in the trailer were really good. I was happy to be able to visit my grandparents whenever I wanted. But soon things shifted a little bad. When we got the trailer, the owner told us that one of the people that lived in the trailer had committed suicide in front of the trailer. What really creeped me out the most was that my room belonged to him. Flash forward to a few months, I woke up in the middle of the night. I don't know why, but for some reason I was scared. I slept with my night light, and when I looked up on the ceiling, I saw a bat. I was so terrified because I thought it was going to bite me. It was on top of the entrance of my bedroom, and I was frozen in place for like a good 20 minutes. Then I got the courage to get up and run to my other grandma's room. I woke her up telling her that there was a bat in my room. She got up and she turned on the light. But when we went to my room, it was empty. We looked everywhere, but we could not find anything. I was so creeped out that my grandma had to sleep in my room to calm me down. I told the kids at school about my experience, but they thought I was joking and just laughed. This other time, my aunt heard someone whisper her name to come. Something or someone was whispering from my room to come. But when she got there, all she saw was me sleeping. She ran to my mom's room and told her the story. They all just laughed, but she was being serious. The last time something creepy happened was when I was home alone with my grandma. I was watching cartoons in my parents' room having a blast. Then someone knocked on the door of the bedroom. It startled me a bit, and I figured it was my grandma trying to get my attention. But when I went to her room, she was doing her laundry. I asked her if she knocked on my door, but she said that she was doing her laundry this whole time. We moved out into another house that was a bit farther from my grandparents' house. All of the supernatural activity stopped after we moved, but I will never forget about those times when I was probably being watched by a ghost. I still see the trailer from time to time. These days the trailer is left abandoned and no one is living in it. I still get creeps every time I remember those events that took place in that trailer. This next story begins with an offer that seemed impossible to refuse. This story comes from our /nasleep, posted by Reddit user Liquid Dongarong. It's titled, "I paid $30 for the perfect face. Last spring I decided I needed a haircut. Something clean, that would make the rest of me matter less. I found a place a few blocks from my apartment, a barber shop that smelled like soap and shaving cream. No fancy shampoos nor offerings for a subscription model, merely a couple of black chairs, as well as a bald man who looked like he'd been cutting hair since the day I was born. I sat down and told him what I wanted, just a little off the top. He nodded and worked in silence. My hair looked better, sharper. For a moment, I felt like a slightly different person from the neck up. But when I looked in the mirror again, the old dissatisfaction was still there. The barber must have noticed. He asked, plainly, if I needed help with anything else. Maybe I only answered because of the way he asked. He was so ordinary, so polite and professional. I confided that there were other things I'd been insecure about as of late. He said he could help. I told him I wasn't interested in plastic surgery. He said it wasn't surgery, just a little off the top. I asked what that meant. He said it would be simple, a cut. He took the shears and, with no ceremony, removed a thin ridge of flesh from the side of my face. It came away like cut clay, no blood, no pain. The piece peeled free in one clean motion. He plopped it on a tray as if it were nothing more than excess hair. When I looked in the mirror, that side of my face looked closer to the one I'd been carrying in my head for years. Cleaner, defined, beautiful. I asked him to do the other side. He did. I asked him to take the soft places from my stomach. He did. Every imperfection, every insecurity, I had him cut it all away that night. All for $30, plus tip. I went back the next week and the weeks after that. Soft places trimmed down, angles sharpened. Each visit I left looking more like the version of myself I could stand. The weak places along my jaw disappeared under the shears. My stomach flattened in increments. I started recognizing myself. I could hold my own gaze for several minutes at a time before looking away. A few people noticed. A coworker complimented the haircut. A woman said I looked sharper, better than I ever had. She asked if I'd been working out. My conversations lasted longer. Eyes lingered. It felt like proof that, for the first time, something was paying off. But it started to feel like something else. I began to wonder whether anyone was actually looking at me, or only at the surface that kept being refined. Those thoughts came and went. I kept going back. There was always one more correction. Cut the fat from the stomach. A cleaner line at the chin, just a little off the top. The ideal kept moving. The goalposts shifted every time I got close. The barber never rushed. He worked with a precision I'd only seen in doctors. Occasionally, he stepped back to study the shape of my body. He spoke only when necessary. When I asked how the flesh came away so cleanly, he only said that some things separate easier when you know what to cut. When I asked what happened to the pieces, he said they'd been taken care of. I should have left it there. One afternoon, the shop was empty. The barber was slow coming out of the back room. Curious, I stepped toward the open doorway. I'd only meant to call his name. The room held every piece that had been taken from me, arranged into a fleshy mass, formless, folded in on itself, stacked and pressed into heaps that took up most of the far corner. Some sections still held older contours, the curve that used to sit above my hips, the thickness under my jaw, the slack on my arms. The mass shifted, breathed. It had no face, yet I knew it could see me. I stood longer than I should have. The barber appeared behind me. He asked, in that same mild tone, if I'd been satisfied. I didn't know how to answer. That night I left, and I didn't go back for a while. The changes held for a time. I still felt the relief of the cleaner lines when I caught myself in the mirror. Then they started slipping. My chin softened first. My jaw followed gradually. I almost talked myself out of noticing. One morning the angle wasn't so sharp. The next day the skin was looser, warmer, almost melting. The trim around my stomach began to fill again. It felt as though my body was trying to restore itself, trying to put the pieces back. It itched. The surface underneath did not feel like healing skin. It felt harder, like something malignant, spreading faster each night. I could feel it settling, resettling, searching for every shape that no longer belonged. I stopped sleeping well. When I did, I dreamed of the mass in the back room folding in on itself. The changes accelerated. My face began to blur again. My muscles waned and sagged. Something inside me no longer felt like my own tissue, denser in places, grainy in others, coalescing into something uncomfortable and barbed. It lasted for weeks, and it kept getting worse. My body, my face, the perfect face I'd almost had, grew more malformed, more unbearable every day. The only way to keep what I wanted was to let him cut again. I went back on a random Tuesday. The shop was quiet. The barber looked up from his chair. He didn't ask where I'd been. He only nodded toward the empty seat. I sat down. He worked with the same careful attention as before. The shears took away thin layers. Each piece peeled free without mess. The face in the mirror was closer again to the one I'd been chasing. That familiar relief settled over my shoulders. Underneath it, something colder stirred. Before I left, I asked about the mass in the back room. He wiped the shears on a cloth and said it was still there, waiting. He asked if I thought I would be finished soon. Again, I didn't answer. I've gone back 4 times since then. The intervals between the mutations are getting shorter. The body tries harder every time to reclaim what was taken. The itching starts sooner. The shifting grows more insistent. I can feel each place wanting to soften back into its old shape, pressing upward, trying to remember exactly where it belongs. When he works, I catch myself wondering how large the mass has become, whether it holds any recognizable shape anymore, or whether those details have been buried under mounds of flesh. I haven't looked again. I don't know if I could stand it. I'm closer to the face I've always wanted. And that's where we'll end today's collection of Reddit horror stories. If these stories gave you chills, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more terrifying tales every week. Don't forget to tell me in the comments which story was your favorite, or which one you'll still be thinking about tonight. Thanks for listening. Sleep well, if you can. I'll see you in the next one.